We've been trying to lead these interviews with asking the people we've been talking with, like, what do you want to talk about? Because we realize that we are just white allies, and we're just trying to amplify people of color's voices. And so I'm not trying to like create any narrative or anything. I just am kind of interested in trying to help people get their voices heard.
Well, first off, sir, let me start off by saying thank you for understanding the message of Black Lives Matters, is that, you know, Black lives are the ones that have been traditionally undervalued throughout American history. So thank you for taking the opportunity to, you know, take a step back and say, let me amplify Black voices. That being said, personally, I love hearing your voice. I love hearing people like you, hearing their voices speak up against this injustice, because that's what's made the biggest change. It's not people like me. People better than me have been saying these things for centuries. What's really made the change is people like yourself coming towards their friends, their family members, their coworkers, and saying, hey, this is not okay. This is not justice. And there are better ways to do things, and we need to talk about them, because otherwise just ignoring the issue is ignorance. So what I would say is, I do appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to speak, but I don't mind answering some questions that you have as well, because I want to make sure that everybody has a clear and concise message about what CHOP is. So if you do have any questions you'd like to answer or ask me specifically, I'd be happy to answer them. That being said, to start it off, I feel like I should just give the overall goal of CHOP and the overall mindset.
Sure.
CHOP definitely started because we all witnessed the death of a man named George Floyd. We watched a man get a knee in his neck for 8 minutes and 40 seconds or whatever crazy amount of time it is to be choking somebody. And we saw injustice. We saw injustice. All of us saw the same thing, injustice. We saw a lack of human decency. And we decided that we're tired of watching innocent people be murdered by people who don't have that authority, but claim to, and have the protections around them to let them continually get away with it. So with CHOP, our overall message is human rights. Yes, right now this started over the Black Lives Matters movement, and yes, that is our main focus, but it is not our only focus. We also believe in LGBTQ rights. We believe in equal rights for women. We believe in equal rights for indigenous peoples and Hispanics and Arabs.
It's almost like everyone deserves equal rights.
First Peoples, because I learned that term earlier today. No, it's almost as if everybody should be treated as human beings. Right. It's kind of a crazy thought, apparently, in 2020. Apparently, because we're getting so much argument and pushback back against it. But, you know, we're just out here trying to show the world that there are better ways if you come together and talk about things. No matter how diverse you are. The Seattle community is a very diverse city, but this city right here is 93% white. Seattle is one of the whitest cities in America. The greater area around it is very diverse, but even Seattle itself is still segregated. That being said, I've always said my entire life that Seattle is the best place in the world. And this moment of seeing people come together, regardless of race, gender, religion, anything like that, come together for one united purpose of peace and justice and love, is just amazing to me. It's never made me prouder to live in this city than this moment here. Let's see, the other things I need to hit, I guess. We've had a lot of divisive voices coming in and controlling the narrative, trying to claim leadership. But these people are only here for the cameras from 10 to 2. They know who they are. Nas, Jay, those are the main ones.
Are we talking about the official local media in Seattle, like King and Kira?
No. We're actually talking, they were girls' names. I'm actually talking about a group of people who have for some reason decided that despite not being here for any amount of time relevant to this movement, despite not contributing anything to this movement, despite their promises of contributing things to this movement, they still for some reason feel that they should be the voices to represent this community. But nobody knows them here. They've started calling themselves the Black Collective of CHOP. But as I mentioned before, CHOP is about uniting all peoples. And by saying you have a Black Collective of CHOP, that is automatically causing division. And what these women did here is alienate our most needed allies here in Seattle, white people. So a lot of progress has been slow by trying to make sure that false groups aren't here distorting our message, which is peace and unity for all and equal human rights for all. Anything else I need to hit? Yeah, I guess I should explain what this black power fist means real quick, because a lot of people don't know what it means. They think it's a black power fist, but actually this fist has been around much longer than that. What this fist represents is the power of the people united. Because if you try to punch somebody with just, or an object or anything, if you try to break something with just one finger, you're not going to be doing much damage. Even 2 fingers or 3 fingers, not going to be doing much damage. 4 fingers, still not doing much. But if you take all 5 of those fingers and you ball them into a fist, you can do a lot of damage. And the bigger that fist is, the harder you hit. So we need all of our allies. We need, once again, allies of every race, every gender, every religion, culture, however you want to frame it. We need people who believe in justice and human rights on our side. They don't need to be alienated. They need to be celebrated for stepping up and doing what's right. The other thing I would like to say is about this building here, this precinct. We did not expect to get this precinct. It was a surprise. When I walked up, I was fully expecting to come up here and yell at some more police officers, and I was surprised to see that this was empty. That being said, we don't ever want to see the same police presence in this building here again. So we are going to remain here until the police come, and we are going to continue to peacefully protest as we have from the start, regardless of them snatching our umbrellas and committing war crimes against us via chemical warfare, which was banned in 1925 internationally. But for some reason, they feel it is acceptable to use it against their own citizens.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that some countries have refused to import tear gas to the United States because of the war crimes they've been committing.
Because it is an international war crime, but for some reason they can use it against their own citizens. That is sick. These people are acting like literal Nazis. The Nazis just followed orders, and even though they hadn't technically committed a crime in committing genocide, they were still held accountable for their actions after World War II and the Holocaust. So these police really need to be scared, which reminds me of the historical context behind the name CHOP. Do you know how he came up with the name CHOP?
I don't. I know that the name Chaz seemed to like mysteriously appear, and that kind of like the people who came here to co-op this movement as well, and you're like,
exactly.
Where did this come from? Where did these people come from?
So I'm not sure who came up with the idea of Chaz. I would suspect it was conservative media, but I have no idea. The fact is, we never declared ourselves an autonomous state. We never seceded from the Union. We never declared a rebellion from the United States of America. So that was a false narrative.
Yeah.
What we have claimed from the start is that we are exercising our American right to peacefully protest, and we're doing it in Capitol Hill. So we came up with the name Capitol Hill Organized Protest. Do you know the historical significance behind the word CHOP?
No.
Have you ever heard of the French Revolution?
Yes.
That's another revolution that was started because people started valuing property over lives. The rich started getting too rich, the poor started getting poor, human rights were ignored, and the people said enough is enough. Do you know what happened to those that did not get on board with the French Revolution?
Guillotine.
That is correct, sir. That is correct. CHOP.
Oh, there you go. Interesting. When I said guillotine, I actually did not even piece it together.
CHOP.
After you said that. That is a hidden definition that I don't think a lot of people know, and I hope I can spread that. That's interesting.
Well, we've intentionally tried not to show our leadership thus far.
Yes.
But because we don't really want leadership, I don't find myself to be a leader. I find myself to be a representative voice for this community. My job currently is brand ambassador for a company that I'm positive you have heard of. But I'm not trying to be a leader. Once again, we wanted to do this as a community. We wanted to come together as a community. So that's what we've done. We haven't made decisions solo. Nobody here is making any one decisions, and those people that are coming up here claiming to do it themselves are lying. They don't represent us, and I've been attempting to call them out on it, but they literally avoid the community. They come here from 10 to 2 for the cameras. They don't donate any of the money donated to them towards this project, towards this movement. Instead, they're fattening their own pockets, and it's time they need to be called out on it. But we don't really want any one person to just step up and speak without the community. This is a community effort. We want everybody's voice to be heard, everybody's ideas to be heard, and then we want to come to a group consensus. So that's what we've been doing. We've been listening to the community for the past few weeks. We've been coming up with ideas. We've been organizing. We've been strategizing. And regardless of if they take this precinct back or not, this movement will continue.
But someone does need to disseminate that information once the consensus is reached. So I guess you don't have to call that person a leader, but somebody with a megaphone that everyone's willing to listen to, right?
As I mentioned, I am one of the representatives of this community. We do have a few others, and I'm trying to organize tomorrow a press release where we're going to sit down and formally announce a group of collected voices, not necessarily leadership, I don't want to say that word, just representatives of the community.
I see. And I mean, I watch local news in Seattle, and it's interesting to hear them talk about how, Mayor Durkin and representatives from the police department have been meeting with leaders of CHOP. And I'm like, who are the leaders?
Yeah,
they say they don't have any.
They say we don't have leaders, so
it's either made up, or who are they talking to? Maybe those people that came in here and infiltrated this area that you're like, who are they?
I'm honestly surprised Mayor Durkin is so gullible, but then I think about it, she didn't even really think about the fact that using tear gas is an international war crime. So I don't really know what to think of Mayor Durkin right now. I'm honestly disappointed. As somebody that comes from the LGBTQ community, I would expect her to be more of an ally in supporting basic human rights instead of committing war crimes against her own citizens. Mayor Durkin already knows her time is up, so I ain't really got much to say to her. But she knows that if she really wants to talk to the real leadership of CHOP, maybe she should just come down to CHOP and ask the community who the leaders are, who the representatives are, who she needs to talk to, whatever she wants to call it. Come and talk to the community. We had open stages up here for 2 weeks, and we wanted the mayor to come and speak to us. We had a lot of questions for the mayor. Why is it so hard for her to just come and spend a few hours walking through the own city that she mayors or governs or whatever you want to put?
You think she's afraid for her safety?
I don't know why. I don't know why she would be afraid for her safety when we haven't had any deaths within the borders of CHOP. The deaths that happened around the vicinity of CHOP were inside the jurisdiction of the Seattle Police Department.
I heard about that.
And they refused to send aid for the man as he bled out. They refused to send officers to secure the situation for almost 30 minutes
They wanted
while
to
their
twist
ambulance was right around the corner.
Yeah.
We have violent people here. We have mentally ill people here. And we have to literally walk them for 4 or 5 blocks to try to get a police escort within their own territory. I had a woman the other day, it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm a known face around here, so somebody had found a mentally ill woman, they bring me over to her. I look at the woman, she had already wet her pants, and she had a child with her. And that was the most concerning thing with me. She's mentally ill right now with a child, and I don't know what the situation is, whether she got laced with drugs, whether it's just a recurring mental, illness issue. But the fact is the child was in safety. And the fact that made me realize that is because this woman left her child with me 3 separate times within 10 minutes of me meeting her. A complete stranger. And
that's not normal.
That's not normal, and it's not safe for that child.
I know.
So, despite the fact that we are right here trying to protest the police, I tried to find other solutions. I tried to contact social services. I tried to contact CPS, and it was too late at night. So I was forced to contact the police for that child's safety. The police told me I needed to walk 5 blocks to get that woman a pickup. I said, how come I can't meet you guys right outside the border of CHOP? That's your jurisdiction. No, we can't go there. How come I can't meet you guys up on Broadway? No, we can't go there. Can I meet you at Seattle U? No, we can't go there. I got to go to the other side of Seattle U and down a block. It took us 5 hours to get that woman and her child to safety, and that is within the police jurisdiction. And considering that we have never declared ourselves an autonomous state, so is this. They should be doing their jobs. They're still getting paid taxes from these people here. They should be doing their jobs. They're still getting paid taxes from the people right outside the borders, and they should be doing their jobs, and they're refusing to.
It seems like they're concerned with the optics of how it looks. Like they think that someone's going to take a picture and be like, oh, they're still protecting and serving the area that they said they don't want them here. Or maybe it's kind of like what's happening in Atlanta, where the police officers are like, if you call 911, we're not showing up because of how you've made us feel. We're going to take our ball and go home, so to speak.
I think it's more likely to the second one, honestly. I don't have any proof of it, but just by the fact that they are refusing to do work in their own jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We have the borders of CHOP clearly lined by the borders that the city set in place. So you have a young man dying right outside of the borders of CHOP. That is their jurisdiction. That is a fact.
Yeah.
They should really have nothing to argue about, and they should be downright embarrassed. The complete Seattle Police Department, Mayor Durkin, and everybody that follows underneath her like lackeys should be embarrassed. And they should be tried for war crimes. I ain't got much else to say about Mayor Durkin other than that. I don't want to see Durkin tried.
Beat that dead horse. So one of the things I would like to touch on is, okay, so we talk about coming to a consensus and having that message conveyed to the people, to SPD, to the mayor. There's a sign that's pretty famous out there, 3 demands that CHOP wants met, that 50% of SPD gets defunded.
Free all peaceful protesters.
And
reinvest in the black community.
Correct. And so I was wondering if we could maybe talk about those 3 demands for a little bit. Like with the first one, with defunding SPD, I think I saw on the news the other day that they had proposed maybe cutting like 5% of their budget.
That's nothing.
And it's nothing.
That's nothing.
It's like, well, they need to go a multiplier of 10 to get to, what this movement is asking for.
Yeah, it's going to be a gradual change. It's not going to happen automatically, but we would like to see police demilitarized.
Yes.
I'm not sure if 50% is the exact correct number.
Yeah.
I would have to really sit down and look at the metrics and the numbers, and honestly, I haven't done that yet. I have enough to focus on here at this moment. But the fact is, the police need to be demilitarized.
Yes.
They don't need to use lethal force every time they show up to a place, or even show up with lethal force as their first option. The police have many other options to use that exist today, but far too often their first choice, even with a man running away, is lethal force. Yeah. Even with a man handcuffed to the ground, you need to put your knee on his neck for 9 minutes while he's begging for his mother, crying, begging for his life, and there's people watching him wanting to help, and they're terrified because the Asian officer standing next to them is guarding, and you might get shot if you try to help. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
These police are acting like a police state, and the craziest part is that in the Constitution, I believe it says something about how we're not supposed to have our military quartered at home. Yet we have literally militarized our police. We literally give them the excess stock of our military, or the old stock of our military, sometimes even the new stock of our military.
Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is how much money we give to the police force in the first place to be able to acquire those military-grade weapons.
They've got tanks and everything.
Do they really need that?
Do they really need that? It says in the Constitution we should not have a military quartered at home, yet we have a military quartered at every precinct. There's something wrong there. And in addition to that, they have so much immunity. These cops can get away with stuff and then get paid vacation, paid leave. Whatever you want to call it, they're sitting at home and getting paid for it.
And there's that argument where people will say, if you aren't doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Can't that same argument be applied to qualified immunity, where it's like, if the police officers aren't doing anything wrong, then they should have nothing to worry about getting rid of qualified immunity and holding them to the same standards that we are held to?
Yeah, exactly. If you're not doing nothing wrong, you shouldn't have nothing to worry about.
But I think
and these body cams should be on all the time. You shouldn't have nothing to worry about if you're doing your job right. If you're an honest, hardworking, good police officer, leave your cameras on all the time, and you should be asking that the officers around you have their stuff on too, because you know some of the dirty things that they're doing. I learned a phrase since these protests, ACAB. I didn't know what it was before I came here. The numerical is 1312. It means all cops are bastards. All cops are bastards. It comes from the theory that if you have 10 bad cops and 90 good cops, and those 90 good cops don't turn in the 10 bad cops for the crimes and atrocities that they're committing, all you cops are bastards. And all you cops should be tried for war crimes for supporting what your fellow officers were doing. and the military that were here as well, because the Nazis taught us that following orders is no excuse.
It's kind of similar to the concept of like, it's not good enough to be neutral on racism. You have to be anti-racist, or you're basically, you might as well, you're siding with the oppressor if you're neutral.
Yeah, correct. We have a saying that's been going around a lot is white silence is violence. Honestly, silence is violence. I've been fighting racism for literal years. Like, before the Black Lives Matter took off, I've been yelling at racists for a long time. But not just white people that didn't step up. I would see Asians that didn't step up. I would see Indians that didn't step up, Hispanics that didn't step up, even other black people that didn't step up to denounce racism. Silence is violence. We need to make sure that the ignorant people do not remain ignorant. This is literally a war that we're fighting. But it's not a war that we're fighting with guns and knives. We're fighting this war with our words. We're fighting this war with our education and our intelligence. And that's why we're gonna win, because Seattle has the smartest people in the world, and we're gonna prove it. That being said, we didn't start this war. The government started this war long ago. And they declared war against black people for centuries, but they've also even started declaring war against white people. They're declaring war in the way that they're lying to you guys with the conservative media. They're declaring war in the way that they're devaluing education. But at the same time, America has this sick infatuation with violence and guns and destruction, to the point that we have already invaded every other corner of the globe. And yet America still wants more. We're still constantly in war, still constantly attacking people who have different skin colors or different religions than the founders of this country. This country is built on a broken system, and so is this criminal justice system. It was built to keep slavery intact via the 13th Amendment, and that is a fact. So we need to dismantle this broken system and replace it with something that is good for the people, that the people have decided on, that is equitable, and that promotes positive change and unity. Because right now, this police station is a symbol of fear. It's a symbol of oppression. It's a symbol of racism. But if we can change this into a positive light, it can be a symbol of hope for the world, that positive change is possible if people just listen to each other. Wow. You know, you just got to teach people. It's a learning process. Education is important. And I'm not saying this as somebody that is not educated. I come from the University of Washington. I was born here in Seattle, lived here my whole life. I have enough math and science to be an engineer if I want to, but I chose to study history.
What drove you to want to study history?
I studied history for the same reason that people study other things. If you study culinary arts, it's because you want to become a cook. You want to learn how to cook things. If you study something like, let me think of another one, art. You study art, it's because you want to create works of art. I studied history so I could learn how to make it.
I like that. History was so boring to me, but I think it's because the history that I was consuming in middle school and high school was very filtered and very, there was definitely an agenda to what I was being allowed to hear.
Yeah.
Something that I was talking to somebody.
Propaganda.
A lot of propaganda. It's kind of like, I think I've heard some quote that's like, whoever wins the war gets to write the history, right? But I was talking to somebody over in Cal Anderson Park last week, and they were mentioning Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. We were out here filming on Juneteenth. I had told that person I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Juneteenth, and many of my friends had never heard of it. And I guess I'm ashamed to admit it, but the truth is, I don't think there's any shame in ignorance. Like, I just wasn't taught. I was never taught that. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, why wasn't I taught that in school, in my history classes? And
well, I would like to clarify with you, sir. Just because you don't know something does not make you ignorant. Just because you had never heard it before does not make you ignorant.
Well, not in a negative way.
The thing that would make somebody ignorant is if they heard that information, learned about it, understood it as being logical, and basically coming down to common sense, and still choosing to ignore it. That's where the ignorance comes from. So you are not ignorant, sir, because you chose to recognize it and learn more about it.
I think I just felt bad
and
that
that's what we want here.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of white guilt that's going around. And that's just you guys showing that you have a heart. I like people like you that are willing to say that you felt bad about it, because it shows that despite me and you having different colors, you still see me as a human being.
Yeah.
Despite you not knowing me, not knowing what God I worship or anything like that, you still see me as somebody that needs to be cared for and needs love. You know, you're not coming out here and just saying terrible things about me to try to tear me down. You're out here coming out here to talk to me. The world needs more people like you.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I'm not one of those people who are going around saying everyone's Antifa here.
Honestly, Antifa, you could call me Antifa. All Antifa means is anti-fascist.
Right.
If you don't know what that means, you should look it up. Antifa is basically like saying anti-Nazi.
Yeah.
As a black man or a black woman or any person of color, you better damn be Antifa. What you mean?
For real.
And Donald Trump's going to call this what he wants to. He can call us terrorists and all this and that. I do not care. The conservative media lies every day.
Yeah.
How you going to call me a terrorist and we're out here feeding poor people?
Yeah.
We're out here taking care of the mentally ill.
Yeah.
We're out here de-escalating violence in the city's jurisdiction. This ain't no autonomous zone. That Chaz don't even sound like a name a black man would come up with. I promise you I had nothing in there with that. We call ourselves CHOP to get the point across because they thought we were a joke at first. This ain't a festival. This is CHOP, like off with your heads. CHOP.
That's what's up. So we talked about the first demand of defunding the police and why that's important in order to instill trust in the new police or whatever they will be called. Maybe it won't even be called the police. But beyond that, the second demand that's on that sign over there is to fund black communities. And so I would imagine that encompasses healthcare and education and infrastructure and housing and et cetera, et cetera.
And the word that everybody is scared to say, reparations.
Reparations. So is that something that you feel like the majority of black Americans are like wanting to have happen?
Yeah, I think that's been a word that has never left American history since blacks were freed.
Yeah.
I mean, reparations is a word that white people are scared of, but white people have gotten reparations throughout American history. Farmers get grants and things like that when they're in need. You know what I'm saying? White businesses get bailouts, banks get bailouts. What? You're a $400 million company and you're getting free money? Look at this coronavirus bill that was passed. I got one $1,200 check. I wonder how much money all these other rich millionaires, $1 million companies are getting.
Yeah.
Millions, you know what I'm saying? The people need that money, not these rich people that don't want to share it.
Yeah.
Capitalism is a broken system. It's a broken system that is going to lead this country to more and more extremes of wealth versus inequality.
I've always thought that reparations is a just request, but I think that myself and maybe the majority of white people in America just don't know how to go about it. Like, who pays for it, how much, like how does that, they just don't even understand, like, how is that going to even work?
Exactly. And
Donald Trump needs to open up the Federal Reserve and just start making it rain.
Well, I
to
mean,
what extent?
He's already been opening up the Federal Reserve. Look at how much our federal debt has increased just under Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, but beyond that,
but it's going to the wrong programs.
It goes back to what you said earlier about people not knowing things.
Yeah.
If you don't know something, the unknown is scary.
Yeah.
The unknown is scary. That's natural, biological nature. I was going to say human, but that is biological nature. Life is fearful of the unknown. So, of course, human life is also fearful of the unknown. But you can choose to remain to be fearful and ignorant, or you can choose to learn about it. America is the richest country that has ever existed. Black people make up 12% of the population, or 14%, or something like that. Reparations are entirely possible. We just need to sit down, talk to each other, and figure out solutions.
Yeah.
But just ignoring things and being ignorant and scared to talk to people is not leadership. What kind of person would want to follow a leader that doesn't listen to the people that they're leading? If they're saying we need this and we need that, and the leader is saying, nah, I know what you need. That doesn't sound like a leader. I guarantee you Donald Trump couldn't even define the word leader properly. I would question if he could spell it.
He can make a great Twitter post about it, I'm sure.
No, it wouldn't be great. Somebody else will make a great Twitter post about it on behalf of him. But even then, you got to check the spelling. I don't know who's working on Donald Trump's team.
Well, we interviewed somebody last Friday on the homeless issue in Seattle, and he was saying that there is a racial component to that as well.
Yes, black people are disproportionately homeless. We have disproportionately bad health care, medical care. We have disproportionate everything. It's a genocide.
Yeah.
By the literal definition of the word genocide, according to the United Nations, which was, I think, ratified in 1951, December, maybe 52, something around there. There are 5 definitions to the word genocide: causing physical or bodily harm to members of the group, killing members of the group, displacing members of the group, providing inadequate living conditions for members of the group.
Interesting.
And number 5 is, gosh, I'm tired.
Oh, it's okay. You're doing great.
You know, there's 5 of them. Go and research it yourself if you don't believe me. It's in the Geneva Convention.
It's interesting that displacing is part of that definition. I had no idea that genocide covered that.
They're displacing African Americans into the jail system at an alarming rate. Mm-hmm. We have more slaves now in the jail system than we did during slavery. In addition to that, I see so many black children that are adopted by white parents. How often do you see a reverse?
Not often.
Not often at all. It's actually quite rare.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to bring down the people that are willing to step up for African American children or African children in need. Those people deserve respect and admiration for what they're doing. But at the same time, you're robbing us of our culture.
Yeah.
And that needs to be recognized.
Yeah. I can see that. So the third demand on that sign, can we address that so I can say that we've talked about the 3 demands that...
Yeah, defund SPD, reinvest in the black community, and free all our peaceful protesters.
Yeah, so is there any particular protesters that you have in mind that are currently in incarceration that CHOP is trying to help get released?
I have one man in mind, and I met him on like the first or second day, maybe even third day I was down here protesting before we took the station. And I tried to follow up with some lawyers that could get some help for him after a situation that I saw. But the reason that it sticks out in my mind is because of the situation that happened. This man literally came down here on the hill where the police had set up their barricades, and he handed out flowers to the crowd. Mm-hmm. Handed me flowers. I took the flowers, and I watched this man literally strip down to his underwear. And he called out to the police, "I am coming over this barricade to hug you." And when he jumped over the barricade, he started walking up to the police, fully unarmed in his underwear, just to hug them. And he got arrested by the police for trying to spread love. And they took him down to the ground, they put him in handcuffs, they put their knees on him, and the white man that tried to step up and make sure he was safe was arrested too. And I'm not sure which one of them was, but one of them was charged with violent assault or something like that against an officer. Both men unarmed. Officers are in full riot gear, and the man's coming out to hug you.
Hugging with a deadly weapon.
In his underwear.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah.
His name is Jacob Caspe, Jacobcaspe. If you guys out there could please make sure that he is getting the services that he needs and the help that he needs in trying to fight off these crazy police. The other man that stepped up and tried to help him that was arrested, his name is Rohi Sharma, ROOHISHARMA. Both those men deserve our respect for what they did, and I hope they are freed already. If not, we need to make sure that the police release them for their peaceful actions in trying to go and hug some officers.
Is there anything that you would like to get off your chest that we haven't talked about yet, or anything you'd like to say to my viewers out there?
I just want to make it clear that what we're trying to start here is the second civil rights movement, and we need all of you to step up around the world as well. We can't do this alone. As I mentioned, we need to unite everybody, regardless of race, gender, religion, all the stuff that divides us. We need to make that fist as big as possible so that we can hit and knock some stuff down.
That's what's up. All right. Well, thanks for talking to us.